On today's Expert Process Podcast, do you know that it takes 10,000 hours to master any subject? Welcome to the Expert Process Podcast, where we cut the time to mastery in half with our seasoned pros. And now, from Atlanta, Georgia, broadcasting worldwide, here's your resident expert, Durante Smith.
Hey everybody, this is Durante Smith. You guys know me, but for those of you who don't, I'm with the Expert Process Podcast. I'm coming to you right now from Kidscreen 2023. If you don't know about Kidscreen, it's probably the biggest animation, kids programming, podcasting, you name it, in the country, in the universe, metaverse, anyway, you get the point. So I'm sitting here today. Now, what I want you guys to understand, this young lady has given me her time twice. Yesterday, we did the interview, and I goofed up, okay? And we just couldn't get the sound the way I wanted it. So she's come back, and I wanted to make that point because when people give me their time, I always like to acknowledge that, right? So thank you so much. So guys, on the show today, we have Jan Stebbins. She's out of New York, is that right? Yeah, she's out of New York. She is a super producer. Don't let her tell you anything otherwise, okay? She's a super producer. She is showrunner, hat wearer of all different kinds of hats. And I was Octonauts or something. Octonauts, right? Octonauts.
Olivia.
Anyway, she's gonna get into all that. So what I want her to do is, I'm a fly on the wall. I'm just throwing some questions in, sprinkling in, right? So I'm gonna let her tell you what she's about, what she's able to do. Jan, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And let's start with this. Tell them what you do, because the thing I find most, people don't understand what we do, right? And they think that our jobs are made up, right? Like, they think everything that you see on TV is magical. It magically appears. Those jobs aren't real. And because they can't understand it, then apparently we are in a play space. So
what times is a
yeah, most times not. So yes, Jan, please help these folks understand.
Sure. So I am an independent animation producer. What that means is I work with various companies in like a consulting capacity, and I wear a couple of different hats. So I do creative development, which is basically helping a creator come up with an idea and develop the characters in the world, or finding an existing piece of intellectual property like a book or a game, and adapting that for television. So that's sort of the earliest part of the process, and it's a really fun sort of sandbox to play in. And then once you get that idea working, you get it ready to pitch, and then it goes off, hopefully into production. So that's one part of what I do. And then the other part is sort of the straight up like nuts and bolts production.
Yes.
So that's called line producing, and that's making budgets and schedules, and setting up processes and pipelines with studios, and sort of managing the whole thing from a non-creative perspective.
Right.
So I do both, which is rare in our industry. Usually you sort of pick a lane, but I had the good fortune of kind of coming up in both places throughout my career. And it's great because I get to work on lots of different projects and lots of different capacities.
So which do you prefer?
Oh, loaded question. In all honesty, I really love both.
Okay.
I find each really satisfying in its own way. Like, I love when you finally crack a story wide open and it's working and it's flowing and the dialogue's funny. I love that. And I also love when like a cash flow adds up and the numbers are all aligning like you want them to. So I really do love both. And for me, it comes down to the project and the people I'm working with.
You will hear this term a lot. What we do in the industry is it's collaborative, right? What that means is we have to work together. There has to be synergy. One of the things you heard her just say is, when you said when it comes together, right? Well, what that means is, I'll give you an example, because I'm a writer as well as producing and directing. When you're in these writing rooms, to get the story worked out, believe it or not, it's a lot more work than people realize. You're talking about 10, 12, sometimes 16-hour days, get this stuff worked out because you're on a deadline. Am I right? So maybe speak to that.
Yeah, I think, finding the right team to work with when people are all on the same page creatively is really important. So whether you're a writer and you're working with other writers in a room, or you're a designer and you're working with an art director and the rest of the design team, everybody sort of uplifts everybody else. And, being able to bounce ideas off of other people who are in that same creative headspace is really important.
Yeah. Now, I say ideally because that is the ideal thing. Now, as we both know, oftentimes you have to put out a lot of fires because there are a lot of egos, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So that's the other side that you have to deal with is managing egos and managing expectations. How do you do that?
Ooh. I think a big part of it is just communication and being already transparent.
Yes.
So, if everybody knows what they're supposed to be doing, and you're really upfront about the expectations and you don't let things fester, right? So if you sort of see things bubbling up, some personnel issues, you just bring everybody together and talk about it, right? You don't want to sort of allow, ill will to sort of spread it. And I think that goes a long way, just calling things out when you see it and working problems out early.
Well, that to me, it gets you the respect of your team, right? Because what you're talking about is accountability.
Yes.
So if you can't hold people accountable, it will be a runaway train fast, right?
Yeah. Introduction is a treat.
It's a train, right? And once it jumps off track, it is very difficult to get back on track because I'm telling you, I've been there, So we have a lot of, synergies in that way, But I know one of the things I want to get to is that you have done productions so it's kind of a vague thing we're talking about now, kind of ambiguous, right?
Sure, yeah.
But let's bring it home for folks to watching because they have kids or whatever, right? But some just watch animation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Tell them about the projects that they would know, like some of the stuff that like some of the Octonauts and stuff like that, and your experiences on that, right?
Yeah, definitely. So on a project like the Octonauts, or Olivia, or the Mr. Men Show, or more recently, there's a project called Sherwood, which is a YouTube original produced by Baby Octopus with this incredible animation studio, Toy Box from New Zealand. And my role on those projects was production management, right? So for Sherwood, for example, I was a line producer, which meant at the very beginning of the project, they had this idea. They came to me and said, we want to make this. And I started putting the pieces together. So I built a budget. I worked very closely with Toy Box to make sure that their budget worked for what we needed.
Wait. Now Toy Box they're an animation studio?
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
Yep.
So Toy Box is an animation studio. So to help you guys understand what she's saying, you got the studio, but the studio wasn't the one that came to you, right?
No. So the company that developed the idea, Baby Octopus, they're sort of the executive producers. So They had this idea.
Right.
They sold it to YouTube Originals, and they oversaw basically all the creative, right? They were the creative mind hive for the project. And then they brought in Toy Box, and Toy Box was a real partner in fleshing out the look and the story. And the director there had a lot of input as the creative sort of evolved. So there's different ways of making shows, right?
Yeah.
Some shows originate in animation studios. Yeah. So in that case, they're everything, right? They're
That's
the
like
executive producers.
Right?
Exactly. But for a lot of independent studios like us, we have to work with partner animation
Right. That's
studios.
That's right.
So in doing that, you do the budget and you schedule, and then it's a lot of keeping everybody on track, right? So making sure that we're hitting those milestones. Scripts are being delivered when the animation studio needs them. Making sure that the creative producers, so the folks at Baby Octopus, have what they need when they need it to be able to share with our outside partners like YouTube. So it's a lot of making sure that the logistics are working so that the creative folks can focus on the creative.
So you say this so naturally. She's so fluid with it. You gotta see this, right? This is when we said with a true pro was when they're fluid. She can just flow with it. But a lot of folks don't know just how extensive all this stuff is on our side of it that we have to put together, right? So, you got the studios, you got tons of different connected pieces, connective tissue, right? With the different, you just mentioned two, 3 companies that you were dealing with there, right? But then you got the whole production side, what you were saying as the line producer or showrunner, right? Stuff like that. Can you speak to like that production process? Like, I guess maybe the what do you call that? The workflow? Is that what that's called?
Yeah. Okay, so say, for example, take a 3D animated show. So you'll start with, once it's greenlit, meaning once your buyer says, okay, move ahead with production, we're happy with where the idea is at. You'll start with scripts, right? Mm-hmm. So you'll get a script in really good shape. Everybody will approve it. And then you'll go into casting, right? You have to figure out who your cast is. So you'll hire a casting director, and you'll find an audio studio to do all the audio voice recording. So you'll do the voice recording. Mm-hmm. While that's happening, you have storyboard artists at the studio doing storyboards. So those are, visual representations. The first time you're taking the script and making it visual. and you're sort of sketching out every shot and, increments within a shot to show what the framing would be, the composition, all of that. Then once you have that, you cut that into what's called an animation, an animatic or a Leica. And that's when you actually take those storyboard panels and you cut them to time. And you're using the voice records that you had recorded, while your artists were storyboarding. So this is the first time you have a rough soundtrack of all the voices and the dialogue, and everything's timed out, and the animatic. So you're seeing the timing of the picture.
It's starting to come together at that point.
Exactly. That kind of becomes the skeleton for the rest of the project, because everything's built upon that.
Right.
So then, while all this is happening, you're doing design. So you have artists working on, first 2D designs of what the characters and the world and the props look like. And once those are approved, then they go into 3D modeling, and there's a lot of steps to that. And then once you have those assets built, then animation can start. So the animators will take that animatic, use that as reference for each shot, and put the characters in the 3D world and start to animate. And then once that's all done, you have to go into post-production. So you put together all the different pieces in a process called compositing. You have your audio post-production. So that's when you have your sound effects and your musical score being added to it. And everything sort of comes together at the end, and then it's off in delivery.
So it's like an orchestra, really.
It really is. Yeah. It's a lot of people working in concert with each other. And the line producer has to make sure that that's all working, right? There's no breakdowns, because, you fall behind in design, and then the animation's not going to be able to start where you want. And then that's going to put off the post-production.
Right.
So it's sort of, it's a lot of balls in the air to manage, but it's also really fun.
You have to be really, 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 really good at multitasking.
Yeah. Big time. Big time.
Almost manic.
Yeah.
Because I that's not my skill, right? That is not my thing. But what I do know is the best ones that I've worked with, they're able to be on one phone here, another phone here, a computer here, a tablet here, somebody in their ear here, somebody else waiting here. I'm looking like, okay, I'm just a director. Okay, take it over there, right? So,
and that's right. That's exactly it. Like the line producer's job is supposed to take away all that miscellaneous stress, so that the director, as a creative team, can focus on what's important.
That's right. Yeah.
Creative.
Yeah. So I'll tell you what I love about this interview is that folks are getting a true behind the scenes look of, like everybody knows film, everybody knows, I don't say TV, but everybody knows film, like indie film. That's a big thing, right? But there's really, I don't want to say there's no such thing, but it's not known like that, like indie animation, right? So that is a true thing, but it's not really known. It's not put out there like that, right? So in the greater context of how people think. So is that a growing space? Is that
for sure? I think as technology's evolved so much in the last decade, the last 15 years, it's so much easier to do animation.
Right.
So because of all the social media, it's easy to self-publish and get your stuff out there. So absolutely, I find that a lot of artists and directors nowadays are being discovered online through their own films. And it's definitely a huge space that it's blowing.
Now, you say their own films, you mean like little shorts and short films and stuff like that?
Yeah, doing short films or even doing online comics.
Yeah.
Sort of building a story world and a brand before they go out and pitch it, or sometimes they're even approached by studios who have maybe went to a film festival with their film. And so it's a great place to experiment. It's a great place to sort of hone your chops, whether you're a director or a writer, and to get work out there that's your own. Because there's one thing about, you can be building a portfolio when you're working at a studio. So say you get a job at Disney and you're a character designer there and you have that. But at that point, you are working under someone else's creative vision, right? Whether it's a director or an art director.
That's right.
So you're not really showcasing what you're capable of. You're showcasing how you can work within an established model, which is a big part of the job, and that's important. But by doing your own work and getting it out there, you're able to really show your creative breadth, and that, I think, serves you very well, especially if you want to one day create a show or direct or whatever.
Yeah. So here's the great thing I hear there, right? Because I get this all the time. I want to work for Disney. I want to work for Netflix. I want to work for, Cartoon Network. But the thing is, I have to help people understand, you have to develop your portfolio. You have to have work. You have to have, something that people can sink their teeth into, right? And what you said was so brilliant, that you can take advantage of the resources that are available to us now, such as TikTok, such as Instagram, such as especially YouTube, right? And kind of build that, not even kind of build your brand, right? Inexpensively, because if you're actually the creative, and this is the other thing I try to explain to people. So if you are an animator, you can you can actually create that, but you need to get with the writer, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you're a writer, then, and you have an animation, well, guess what? You need to get with someone that can direct it, that can actually run it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you can put together your team and actually create something that's brilliant, that's short, and really actually launch your career, you guys together can launch. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah.
Am I too far off?
No. I think that's one part of it, right? Like, I think that is a great way to go about, building your creative point of view. And if you're working on something that you hope to grow into a larger property, like a show or a film, that's awesome. I do think there's also still a lot of value in working at these big studios or even smaller studios, because the creativity and the creative point of view is only one part of it.
Okay.
You also need to be able to work within a team, work within a production structure. You need to understand all the moving parts. And that's that great experience that you get working for a Disney or a Netflix or a Cartoon Network. So they kind of go hand in hand. And I think the best thing for people just starting out in the industry is get that job so you can see how things are supposed to go, and keep working on your passion projects outside of that. And that's hard, because when you come home from staring at a computer screen all day, you just want to veg out, and it's hard to kind of work on your things.
Right.
But I encourage people to really find that time.
Yes.
Because that is important in sort of building yourself up beyond just sort of your career.
Right.
Yeah.
So here's the thing, guys. So Jan, the thing is, she is a consultant. She's you do freelance, correct? Right. Okay. She freelances. She's a consultant. So you hear that she has the knowledge. You hear she has the experience. So if you are talking now to a potential client, right? And let's clarify, who is your client? Who's your ideal client? If you're speaking to them, you're speaking to them right now, what is it you want them to take away from this interview?
Right. So I think most of my clients tend to be companies, right? So it's companies that have overflow of work. They need help development. They need help putting together, or smaller production studios. They need help putting together projects. So for them, I can do that, right? And I'm fortunate that I know a lot of people in the kids business, and a lot of that comes from relationships. Aside from that, I do some work with creators who are just starting out. That's a different thing, right? Like, you're an independent creator. You're not hiring someone like me. You don't have that sort of funding to do that. So in those instances, if I find someone that I really think has some really great potential, and they have an idea that I'm really passionate about, then I'll partner with them as a producer. Those are few and far between, because, as you know, passion projects take up a lot of time, and there's only a payoff until it gets off the ground.
So to wrap, first off, let me say thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And the other thing I want to say is, guys, please check her out. Can we tell them where they can find you?
Yeah, find me on LinkedIn. That's the best
Find
place.
me on LinkedIn. Guys, thank you, and we'll see you next time. We're out.